General Kael'thas just declared our weapons obsolete, laughed in the diplomats' faces, and the human mechanic, the mechanic, just asked if she could borrow his armor for 5 minutes, tops. Ambassador Xylar felt his 3 hearts skip simultaneously. The neutral mediator's skin flushed pale blue as he looked from the towering Zephrani general to the human in grease-stained coveralls standing in the maintenance bay doorway, like she just wandered in from a lunch break. Behind him, the holo projector still displayed the evacuation orders for 3 human colonies: New Terra, Harvest, and Kepler's Promise. 2.8 billion people who'd be displaced if these negotiations failed. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, the deadline, 48 hours. The past 3 hours had been a systematic dismantling of humanity's negotiating position. Kael'thas had brought his personal armor to the negotiation chamber and subjected it to every weapon in humanity's current arsenal. Plasma cannons that could melt through ship hulls left scorch marks that faded within seconds. Particle beams designed to disrupt molecular bonds simply dispersed across the armor's surface. Even the new kinetic accelerators, weapons that could punch through 6 meters of composite ship plating, had merely dented the bioorganic material before it flowed back into shape like living metal. "You want to borrow my armor?" General Kael'thas's mandibles clicked in what passed for Zephrani laughter. His bioorganic battlesuit gleamed unmarred despite taking direct hits from plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic accelerators for the past 20 minutes. "For what purpose, little mechanic?" Sarah Jackson wiped her hands on her coveralls and shrugged. "Got something in my toolkit I want to test. Won't take long, unless you're scared your armor can't handle it." The entire diplomatic corps went silent. Ambassador Chen felt his career ending in real time. The Zephrani had 17 dreadnoughts in orbit, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with the same technology that made Kael'thas invulnerable. Humanity had 3 modern warships and a dozen retrofitted colony defense platforms. The math was brutal. This negotiation was their only chance to avoid a massacre that would make the history books weep, and now his maintenance mechanic was antagonizing their supreme military commander. Chen's diplomatic training had covered hundreds of scenarios: hostage situations, cultural misunderstandings, accidental insults, even assassination attempts. Nobody had covered what to do when your mechanic challenges an alien general to a weapons test during the most important negotiation in human history. "You dare challenge the general's demonstration?" Commander Vexthul's hand went to his sidearm, the threat clear. "Challenge? Nah." Sarah pulled a piece of gum from her pocket and unwrapped it slowly. "Just curious. Your boss spent 20 minutes showing off how nothing can touch that fancy armor. I got something that might. Or might not. Either way, we'll know in like 2 minutes." Chen stood abruptly. "Sarah, a word, now." "Can it wait?" "I'm kind of in the middle of now." Sarah rolled her eyes but followed Chen to the corner of the chamber. He grabbed her arm, keeping his voice low and urgent. "Do you understand what's at stake here? 3 colonies. 2.8 billion people. If you insult that general, he walks out, and those people have 72 hours to evacuate before Zephrani occupation forces arrive. 72 hours to pack up entire lives, abandon homes, leave everything they've built." "I know the stakes, Ambassador." Sarah's casual demeanor dropped for just a moment, and Chen saw something harder underneath. "My parents live on New Terra. My sister's family is on Harvest. You think I don't know what we're losing here?" She glanced back at Kael'thas, who was watching them with obvious amusement. "I also know that armor's their entire negotiating position. They're demanding our colonies because they think we can't fight back. But what if we can?" "With what? A mechanic's toolkit?" "With this." Sarah patted her pocket. "Look, I've been watching those tests for 3 hours. Their armor's incredible, against modern weapons, but modern weapons all work the same way: energy transfer, molecular disruption, exotic particle interaction. That armor's designed to counter all of that, but there's a whole category of weapons nobody tested. Because they're obsolete. Because everyone assumes they're obsolete. Sarah's eyes were sharp now, focused. General Kael'thas made the same assumption. His scientists made the same assumption. Hell, our military made the same assumption. But I fix things for a living, Ambassador. I know that sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Sometimes simple beats sophisticated. Chen stared at her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd wandered into his negotiation. Sarah Jackson, age 28, hired 6 months ago to maintain the embassy's vehicles and equipment. Personnel files said she'd served 4 years in the Colonial Marines as a vehicle mechanic before taking a civilian position. Decorated twice for keeping equipment running under combat conditions. He'd barely glanced at her background check. Mechanics weren't usually relevant to diplomacy. Apparently, he'd been wrong about that. 5 minutes, Chen said finally. You get 5 minutes to either save us or doom us. If it goes wrong, we were doomed anyway. Sarah's casual grin returned. But it won't go wrong. Trust me, I'm very good at my job. That's the spirit. Sarah grinned and turned back to the waiting Zephrani. Sorry about that. Bosses, am I right? Kael'thas had been watching the exchange with obvious amusement. Your ambassador seems concerned. Perhaps he understands that insulting Zephrani military superiority has consequences. Oh, I'm not insulting anything. I'm testing a hypothesis. Sarah met the general's four-eyed gaze without flinching. You claim your armor's impenetrable. I think I can poke a hole in it. If I'm wrong, you get bragging rights and we keep negotiating on your terms. If I'm right, well, maybe those terms change. Vexthul stepped forward. The terms are not negotiable. 3 colonies or war, Kael'thas finished, which you cannot win, but... The general's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. If your mechanic can demonstrate a weakness in our armor, a genuine weakness that would be relevant to our discussions. He spread his arms wide. Very well, little human. Show me this miracle from your toolkit. Chen watched Sarah disappear into the maintenance bay and felt every second tick by like a countdown to disaster. Around him, the other diplomats were already preparing contingency plans, evacuation protocols, refugee processing, war scenarios. Xilar moved to Chen's side, his voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador, I must know, do you have any idea what she's planning? None whatsoever. Then why did you allow this? Chen laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Because she's right, we're losing this negotiation. At least this way, we're doing something other than accepting the inevitable. Sarah emerged carrying a long, worn wooden case. The maintenance bay's lights caught the brass latches as she set it on an equipment crate. When she opened it, Chen's stomach dropped. Is that a hunting rifle? He couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Remington Model 700, 30-6 Springfield. Sarah lifted the rifle with obvious care. My great-great-grandfather bought it in 2023, used it for 40 years, passed it down, still shoots straight. Kael'thas's mandibles clicked rapidly. Surprise, then dismissive amusement. A chemical propellant weapon from the early 21st century? His laughter boomed. You think a relic defeats Zephrani military engineering? It's not a relic. It's a tool. Sarah worked the bolt action, the mechanical sound crisp in the sudden silence. And yeah, I think it'll go through your armor like tissue paper. Vexthul was already pulling up technical specifications on his datapad, his mandibles clicking as he processed the information. General, this weapon's projectile velocity is approximately 850 meters per second. Our armor is rated against kinetic accelerators, operating at 3,000 meters per second. The human weapon is 3 times slower, and its projectile is simple lead and copper alloy. No exotic materials, no molecular disruption capability, no energy transfer beyond basic momentum. He looked up, his 4 eyes showing something between confusion and disdain. This is less advanced than some ceremonial weapons used in our empire. Which means it's not even worth testing, Kael'thas finished. But Chen noticed something. The general wasn't walking away. There was curiosity in those alien eyes, maybe even a hint of respect for Sarah's audacity. However, for the entertainment value alone, I will allow this demonstration. It will make an excellent story for my officers, the day a human tried to defeat Zephrani armor with a weapon their ancestors used for hunting animals. His mandibles clicked in amusement. Vex Thule, full defensive configuration. General, you can't be serious. That's an order, Commander. Kael'thas's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. If I am to demand 3 human colonies based on the superiority of our armor, I should be willing to prove that superiority against any challenge, even one as quaint as this. Vex Thule's mandibles clicked in frustration, but he activated his handheld device. The bio-organic armor covering Kael'thas began to glow faintly as additional protective layers activated, flowing up from the underlayers like liquid metal solidifying into place. Full defensive configuration active. Redundant energy dispersion fields online. Molecular reinforcement at maximum. The General's armor could now withstand a direct hit from a ship-mounted plasma lance. Chen found himself holding his breath as Sarah loaded a single round. Everything came down to this moment. 3 billion people's futures balanced on a 120-year-old rifle and a mechanic's hunch. You might want to stand on that test plate, Sarah suggested, chambering the round. Just in case. The round will not, Sarah fired. The crack of gunfire was shockingly primitive compared to the weapons tested earlier. No electronic whine, no plasma discharge. Just a sharp, brutal sound that made half the room flinch. Kael'thas looked down at his chest, at the neat hole punched through his supposedly impenetrable armor, at the blue blood seeping through the breach. Time seemed to stop. Then Chen's brain caught up with what he was seeing, and he realized Sarah had just changed everything. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Vex Thule was calling for medical teams, his voice carrying genuine alarm for the first time since the negotiations began. Zelar was frantically recording data with 3 different devices simultaneously, his skin cycling through colors Chen had never seen before. The human military attachés, who'd been silent observers until now, were suddenly very interested in the rifle that had done the impossible, crowding around Sarah's position with questions already forming. And Sarah just ejected the spent casing with a metallic clink that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden cacophony. The brass tumbled through the air in slow motion, catching the light before hitting the floor with a tinny ring. She looked at Kael'thas, who was still staring at his chest in disbelief, and asked with perfect casual innocence, "So, want to renegotiate those terms?" Chen couldn't help it. He laughed. Actually laughed, a sound that came from somewhere deep and slightly hysterical. 3 minutes ago, they'd been facing forced evacuation of 3 colonies and the displacement of billions of people. He'd been mentally composing the speech he'd have to give explaining how diplomacy had failed, how he'd failed. Now, the Zephrani general, the supreme military commander of an empire that had conquered 17 star systems, stood bleeding in his impenetrable armor, and a mechanic with her grandfather's deer rifle had just rewritten the entire strategic balance of power between 2 civilizations. The laughter spread, first to his assistant, then to 2 of the other human diplomats who'd been holding their breath for 3 hours. It wasn't funny, not really. It was the release of tension that had been building since Kael'thas had started his demonstration, the sudden shift from certain defeat to possible victory. It was inappropriate and unprofessional, and Chen couldn't stop. Kael'thas touched the hole in his armor, his 4 eyes wide. "Explain. Now, how did this happen?" "Physics, mostly." Sarah set the rifle down carefully, treating it with the respect of someone handling a family heirloom that had just performed exactly as expected. "Your armor's bio-organic, right? Designed to absorb and disperse energy from plasma weapons, particle beams, that kind of thing. I watched it work for 3 hours, watched it literally drink in the plasma from our cannons and disperse it across the entire surface area. Watched it flex and flow to distribute kinetic impacts from our accelerator rounds. It's brilliant engineering, genuinely impressive, but it's brilliant for modern weapons. She picked up one of her unused rounds, holding it up so everyone could see. This is a 180-grain soft-point bullet, lead core, copper jacket, designed to expand on impact. When I fire it, the gunpowder, a simple chemical propellant that humans have been using since the 14th century, creates gas pressure that drives this bullet down the barrel. No magnetic fields, no gravitational manipulation, no exotic particles, just pressure and physics. The bullet exits at about 850 meters per second. Too slow to penetrate, Vexthul protested, but his voice lacked conviction now. Too slow for your armor to register as a significant threat, Sarah corrected. See, your armor's designed to detect high-energy impacts and activate its dispersion systems. But my bullet doesn't carry enough energy to trigger those systems. It's moving slower than your armor's threat threshold. So instead of dispersing the energy across the entire surface, she made a poking motion with her finger. It just punches through. Pure kinetic transfer. The bullet doesn't explode, doesn't release energy, doesn't do anything except move forward. Your sophisticated energy dispersion system has nothing to grab onto, so the projectile follows the path of least resistance. Straight through. Chen watched understanding dawn on the Zephrani scientists' faces. It was like watching someone realize they'd overthought a problem so badly they'd circled back to making it worse. To put it another way, Sarah continued, your armor is like an umbrella designed to handle a hurricane, fantastic at dispersing massive amounts of energy from above. But I didn't bring a hurricane. I brought a pointy stick moving at 850 meters per second. The umbrella doesn't know what to do with that. Impossible! Our scientists tested every weapon type. Every modern weapon type, Chen interrupted, finally seeing where this was going. You tested plasma, particle beams, energy weapons, all sophisticated complex systems. You never tested simple ballistics because you assumed they were obsolete. Zephrani was pulling up data files, his translator adding excitement modulation. Ambassador Chen is correct. The Zephrani testing protocols I reviewed focused entirely on contemporary military technology. Chemical propellant weapons were classified as historical and excluded from analysis. Because they are historical, Vexthul protested. No advanced military uses such primitive. We do, Sarah said. Every human soldier carries a ballistic sidearm as backup. We've got billions of these weapons. They're cheap, reliable, and they work in any environment. She picked up the ejected casing, still warm. Why would we stop using something that works? Chen watched the implications hit the Zephrani delegation like a second bullet. Their entire military doctrine was built around their armor. They'd spent 2 centuries perfecting bioorganic systems that could withstand modern weapons. And humanity had just demonstrated those systems were vulnerable to technology from humanity's industrial age. General, Chen said carefully, I believe we should discuss new terms. Kael'thas straightened despite the wound in his armor. Commander Vexthul, retrieve standard infantry armor. We need to verify this is a systemic weakness, not a flaw in my personal suit. Sir, you need medical. The wound is superficial. The armor absorbed enough impact to prevent serious injury. Kael'thas's mandibles clicked slowly. But it did not stop the projectile. That is what matters. 20 minutes later, they'd converted the maintenance bay into a test range. A section of standard Zephrani infantry armor hung on a stand, the same type worn by thousands of soldiers across their empire. Sarah fired once. Clean penetration. She moved to 50 meters. Penetration. 100 meters. Still penetration. Chen watched Vexthul's expression change from disbelief to horror as the tests continued. The commander understood what Chen had already realized. This wasn't just about one rifle. This was about the fundamental vulnerability of their entire military. Try a smaller caliber, Zephrani suggested, his translator adding a note of desperate hope. Sarah produced a 9mm handgun, way less powerful than the rifle. She fired. Penetration, though less devastating. The Zephrani military scientists who'd arrived to document everything stood in stunned silence. One finally spoke. This armor was designed to protect against plasma, weapons, particle beams, explosive projectiles, all modern military technology. Right, Sarah said, but modern kinetic accelerators use magnetic fields to achieve velocity. The projectiles themselves are designed with exotic materials for energy transfer on impact. My bullets are just copper-jacketed lead moving fast because I set off a small explosion behind them. Your armor's sophisticated energy dispersion system has nothing to work with. It's devastatingly simple, another scientist admitted. We over-engineered against advanced threats and remained vulnerable to simple momentum transfer. The armor is perfect for the war we expected, useless for the war we'd actually face against humans. Chen saw Kael'thas absorbing this information, saw the moment the general truly understood. The Zephrani Empire had built 17 dreadnoughts and equipped 1 million soldiers with armor that humanity's most common weapons could defeat. The strategic implications were staggering. "How much does it cost to manufacture one of your rifles?" Vexthul asked suddenly. "This one?" "About 800 credits in today's money." "And ammunition?" "Less than a credit per round. You can make your own for cheaper if you're into reloading." The scientists calculated frantically, their data pads lighting up with economic analyses that were probably giving their military procurement office heart attacks. "General, a single plasma rifle costs 47,000 credits to manufacture. 47,000. The Terran ballistic rifle costs 800. Our standard ammunition costs 12 credits per plasma charge. Their ballistic ammunition costs less than 1 credit per round. A human soldier equipped with ballistic weapons costs 5% of what one of our soldiers costs to outfit, and their weapons defeat our armor." Another scientist pulled up production data, his mandibles clicking in distress. "Worse than that, plasma rifles require specialized manufacturing facilities, rare materials, and precision engineering. I'm looking at Terran ballistic weapons specifications. They can manufacture these rifles in basic machine shops. The ammunition requires copper, lead, and simple chemicals. They have the industrial capacity to produce millions of weapons per month. We can produce thousands." Chen saw Kael'thas absorbing this information, saw the moment the general truly understood what he was facing. The Zephrani Empire had built 17 dreadnoughts and equipped 1 million soldiers with armor that humanity's most common weapons could defeat. They'd spent 2 centuries perfecting bioorganic technology that was useless against a weapon design from humanity's industrial revolution. The strategic implications were staggering and terrifying. "General," one of the scientists said quietly, "if we went to war with humanity tomorrow, we would be facing an enemy that could equip every adult in their population with weapons that defeat our armor. They have 8 billion people in their home system alone. Even if only 1% of them took up arms, that's 80 million soldiers with armor-defeating weapons." He paused. "We have 1.2 million combat-ready troops across our entire empire." The silence that followed was absolute. Vexthul broke it, his voice carefully controlled. "How much does it cost to manufacture one of your rifles?" "This one?" "About 800 credits in today's money," Sarah repeated. But Chen could see she understood the calculation happening in the Zephrani commander's head. "And ammunition. Less than a credit per round. You can make your own for cheaper if you're into reloading. Lots of humans do it as a hobby." Sarah pulled out her datapad. "I can pull up the specifications if you want. The designs are public. No patents, no military restrictions. Anyone with basic manufacturing equipment can make them." Kael'thas's mandibles clicked slowly as he turned to face Chen. "You knew. When you authorized this test, you knew what would happen." "No," Chen admitted. "I gambled. Sarah said she thought it would work. I had no proof, no certainty. But we were losing those colonies anyway, so—" He spread his hands. "Sometimes you have to roll the dice." "And you won," Kael'thas said flatly. Then, surprisingly, his mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. "You turned a negotiation you were losing into one where we must reconsider our entire position."
Well played, Ambassador. Thanks, Sarah. She's the one who knew about the armor vulnerability. I didn't know, Sarah protested. I just figured bioorganic armor probably wouldn't handle ballistics well. It was an educated guess. An educated guess that changed the course of this negotiation. Kael'thas looked at his own diplomats. We will withdraw our territorial demands. New negotiations will proceed on equal terms. Sir? Vexthul looked shocked. But we have military superiority. We have 17 dreadnoughts in armor that doesn't work against the enemy's most common weapon. That's not superiority. That's a critical vulnerability the humans have been polite enough not to mention. Kael'thas's 4 eyes narrowed. They've been negotiating in good faith while we made threats based on false assumptions. That ends now. Chen felt tension. He hadn't realized he was carrying drain from his shoulders. 3 billion people would keep their homes. The war nobody wanted to fight wouldn't happen. All because a mechanic with her grandfather's rifle had proved that sometimes old solutions beat new problems. General, Chen said, might I suggest a mutual defense agreement? Your energy weapons and human ballistics could complement each other rather well. A wise suggestion. Kael'thas extended a clawed hand. It seems we have much to learn from humanity's refusal to abandon working technology. Chen shook the offered hand, careful of the claws. And we have much to learn from your advanced systems, cooperation instead of conquest. Imagine that. The mechanic with the antique rifle imagined it, Kael'thas said dryly. Perhaps we should listen to mechanics more often. Sarah had already started packing up her rifle. Are we done here? Because I still need to fix that transport's landing gear. Been putting it off all morning for this negotiation thing. Chen stared at her. Sarah, you just prevented a war. Yeah, and Ambassador Chen's been pestering me about that landing gear for 3 days. If I don't fix it soon, you'll file another maintenance request, and then I'll have paperwork. She latched the rifle case. I hate paperwork more than I hate wars. She walked back toward the maintenance bay, whistling tunelessly. The assembled diplomats, generals, and scientists watched her go. That, Kael'thas said slowly, is the most dangerous human I have ever met. She's a mechanic, Chen pointed out, though he was starting to wonder himself. Precisely. She treats preventing wars the same way she treats fixing landing gear, as an interruption to her real work, and she does both with the same casual efficiency. Kael'thas touched the hole in his armor again. Terrifying. Shalar was already drafting new treaty terms. Perhaps it's better this way. War is much more complicated than landing gear. For most people, Chen agreed. Then he smiled. But apparently not for Sarah Jackson. The treaty was renegotiated over the next week. No territorial concessions, mutual defense pact, technology sharing agreement. Chen made sure Sarah got credit in the official records, though she tried to decline. It's just going to mean more interviews, she complained. It's also going to mean a substantial bonus and a promotion, Chen countered. Can I decline the promotion and keep the bonus? Promotions mean management. Management means meetings. Meetings mean paperwork. Yes, I know. Chen smiled. Fine, bonus only. But you're accepting a commendation from the Secretary of Defense. Do I have to make a speech? No. Then fine. General Kael'thas commissioned a full military analysis of primitive human weapons technology. The results were distributed throughout the Zephrani Empire with a simple notation. Pride blinds. Never again. Sarah's gift arrived 2 days later. A complete maintenance kit with parts she'd been waiting months to receive and a case of premium 30-06 ammunition. The note read, "Thank you for the education. May your landing gear never fail." General Kael'thas. She used the parts immediately, fixing not just Chen's transport but 3 other shuttles that had been waiting on backorder components. The ammunition went into her storage locker, and her great-great-grandfather's rifle went back into its case, having done its job one more time. As Sarah finished reinstalling the transport's landing gear assembly, she allowed herself a small smile.
the absurdity of the whole situation wasn't lost on her. Decades of military planning, billions of credits spent on advanced weapons, and it all came down to a hunting rifle from 2023. She torqued down the final bolt and stood back to admire her work. The landing gear was solid, properly aligned, and would probably outlast the shuttle itself if maintained correctly. Unlike wars and negotiations and political posturing, mechanical problems had clear solutions. You either fixed them or you didn't. Much simpler than shooting holes in alien generals. Though, she had to admit, as she closed her toolkit, that had been pretty satisfying too. The look on Kael'thas's face when the bullet punched through his impenetrable armor. Priceless. Sarah grabbed her coffee, cold now but she'd drunk worse, and headed back to her office. 5 more maintenance requests were already waiting. A leaky hydraulic line in Shuttle Bay 3, recalibration needed on the cargo lift, something about a stuck airlock that nobody could explain. Real problems, fixable problems, the kind of work that actually mattered. She sat down at her desk, took a sip of cold coffee, and got to work. Behind her, through the maintenance bay window, she could see the diplomatic vessels departing. Crisis averted, war prevented, galaxy saved. And Sarah Jackson, who'd made it all possible, was already thinking about that hydraulic leak and whether she'd need to replace the whole line or if she could get away with new seals. Some people saved worlds with grand gestures and dramatic speeches. Sarah did it with a hunting rifle and a wrench, then went back to work because landing gear didn't fix itself. Best of both worlds, really.